Hello, this is Resource of the Week with SolanoConnex, Mental Health Service Access and You. My name is Elena Starr.
And I'm Valentina Kelly. And this week we're meeting with Arthur Camargo, the Drug Safe Solano Project Coordinator at Touro University California. Arthur, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
We're really excited to get to learn a little bit more from you. Could you tell us a little bit about which organization you're from and what it specializes in?
Sure. So that's kind of a two-tiered answer. Obviously, I'm from Touro University, so that's a medical school. But beside that, and why we're here is I'm also the coordinator for Drug Safe Solano. And what we do there is we kind of oversee, support, and try to build infrastructure around resources in recovery and treatment for substance use disorders, and especially nowadays, opioid use disorders. And I say that because lately there has been an opioid epidemic that has been having its clutches on the country, and it has been impacting Solano County, especially with fentanyl and carfentanil. Both of those are even more potent versions of opioids or opiates than you would find with heroin, for example. So those being more powerful, we have incidences of both overdose and of opioid poisonings. Yeah.
Wow.
So we try to give people resources, information, get them connected to support family members who are going through SUD, OUD, to prevent that to begin with, as well as to help them through the process of recovery and treatment.
That's great. What kind of, just, piggybacking off of that, what kind of services and resources do you guys offer to community members?
Well, we don't do direct patient resources.
Right.
But we do referrals. So we have a patient navigator, for example, Sandy Rose Ellerby, who is just super fantastic. And what Sandy's job is to take people who call in, and there's a number you can call to get in contact with Sandy, and then Sandy will take you directly by phone or virtually to these services and get you connected with them if you want to go into treatment or if you want to go into recovery. Sandy's really good at judging where people are in terms of their SUD or OUD, and is really good at placing people in places that are appropriate. Obviously, there's going to be a screening process. Usually beforehand, a doctor will do a screening, or sometimes an emergency room doctor, but that's when the referral comes in, and then either Sandy will make contact first, or the patient or person will make contact first. But those are really the only services that we provide. We do a lot of education, outreach, information, and we let people know what different resources are out there as well.
Yeah, the education piece you guys provide is so important. I mean, you also do, can we talk a little bit about that? Because that's such a big part of what you guys do. And can you tell us about those?
Sure. So probably one of the biggest ways we reach folks, we have two really big ways. The first way is outreach, where we go out and do events, John's Table, for example, or public health events here and there, church events here and there, etc. So we do these events and we provide folks with either the means for connection or the means and resources for how to get their folks connected, the people that they are concerned about or care about or love, and then who are living with substance use disorder or opioid use disorder. So that's one thing that we do, and we're very good at it. We have little items for folks to remember us by, but most importantly, we have a contact card that has information on how to make that connection. And then second, our second biggest way of getting information out there is the naloxone use trainings. A lot of folks don't know what naloxone is, or Narcan as it goes by. So when opioids go into your brain, there are specific receptors in your brains. In other words, it's almost like a lock and key situation where the opioid is the key, and it fits into the lock of the nerve endings that are in the brain, and it can actually control some of these processes or block other processes. For example, it will enhance endorphin production, but at the same time, it'll block the signals that control breathing and other functions. So if someone takes too much of this opioid, then you get shallow breathing. Shallow breathing means less oxygen, less responsiveness. Maybe you see people with their lips turning a little blue, shallower
Wow.
breathing, slower breathing for sure. Maybe they look like they're falling asleep. They become unresponsive. And then, you go through this whole checklist in our training of what to look for in an overdose. And those are some of the things that you look for. But once you identify that the person is, in fact, in either overdose or experiencing opioid poisoning, then we would administer naloxone or Narcan. And what that does is it goes into the brain and it blocks the opioids from being able to bind into those kind of keyholes that the nerve endings have, so that instead of opioids going in there, it's the naloxone that's in there.
Okay.
So it's very good at reversing overdose or opioid poisoning. And it's also very fast acting. So within 2 to 3 minutes, one would expect someone to come out of it, unless it's a very potent substance that they use, for example, fentanyl or carfentanil. And those may take 3, 4, 5 units of Narcan to overcome. For fentanyl and for carfentanil, we've heard stories of as many as 8 units of Narcan being utilized. The person's in the hospital and they still don't recover. So it's very potent.
Wow. And sorry, just maybe for people like myself who don't know, were you calling it carfentanil and fentanyl? What are those different?
Yes, so opioids come in 2 different flavors, basically, the natural kind and the lab kind. So, for example, heroin is largely still from the opium poppy or the poppy opium plant. And what happens is that there are some folks who derive it into different forms, and then they make things like sometimes it's called codeine or other substances depending on what they're being put into, like cough syrup to ease irritation in the throat so you don't cough as much, or maybe it's a painkiller, or maybe it's a therapeutic painkiller, like if you have constant back pain because of injury, that kind of stuff. And then there's the carfentanil and fentanyl. Fentanyl is basically designed for traumatic pain. So if you have a broken arm or a broken leg or something along that scale of pain, then you would be given a fentanyl patch, for example, while you're in the ambulance and on the way to the hospital. And then you would be given a very controlled amount of either fentanyl or something a little bit less in the hospital once you get settled, etc. And depending on what kind of injury you're dealing with. So these, like fentanyl and carfentanil, are actually, they have so very little of the original opiate that it's considered synthetic, if it has any at all. And so what happens though is you get these very concentrated substances, so that you might have a few grams of heroin might provide an overdose, maybe 2 or 1 gram of fentanyl, and then you're talking about maybe a few micrograms for carfentanil. There's a famous image, for example, that the DEA is starting to use in their campaigns, and quite frankly, a lot of us local coalitions are starting to use it as well. But it's a couple of vials with lethal amounts of heroin versus fentanyl versus carfentanil. And the bottom of the vial is filled with heroin. That's a lethal dose. And then only part of the bottom is filled with fentanyl, and that's a lethal dose. And then you look over at carfentanil, and there's a small little grain that you can barely see, and that's a lethal dose. But the challenge with that, and the reason why it's impacting our communities, is that it's very easy to disguise in other substances. So if you buy, for example, other substances like even meth or heroin or cocaine, or well, not heroin, but cocaine, you have some dealers who might actually add the fentanyl or carfentanil into those drugs. And so you have people in the community who are overdosing, or in this case, experiencing opioid poisoning, even though they weren't actually using fentanyl or carfentanil on
Wow.
purpose, right? So,
That's
and
pretty
that's one of the reasons why we call it a poisoning versus an overdose, because, it's like somebody slipped that stuff in there and it's acting like a poison for them.
that's pretty terrifying.
Yes, yes, it is.
And I remember, I mean, I've seen at your outreach events, it's actually pretty powerful when you guys do that, when you have those vials and visuals, because I mean, it's pretty intense to see how little it takes.
Hmm.
Just like you were saying, I mean, but it's pretty powerful to see those images and to see that visual too.
Yeah. So a lot of black market pills nowadays, counterfeit pills too. A lot of times people buy pills online that they can't buy through their pharmacist anymore. And, depending on where they get it from, it might be counterfeit pills that look very similar to the original. And, for the person who's really not aware of what the pills are supposed to look like other than generalities, then you don't know what to look for specifically. And that's where
Yeah.
the poisonings can happen. And we've
Wow.
had quite a few poisonings as young as teenagers in high school, and with the older population as well, we've had some. But the main group that we're concerned with are folks between the ages of 19 and 29.
Wow.
Those folks are at highest risk for going to the emergency room or experiencing poisonings or overdose that prove to be lethal at higher rates than other groups, other age
Wow.
groups. Yeah.
Wow. I don't think I knew that. But that's why it's also so important that you guys are doing this education and
Hmm.
outreach for people and informing people, because I think it's important, just kind of how you're saying, is that some people might be taking this without realizing that they're taking it, right? If
Right.
it's in something else. And then does Narcan work for any opioids? Or I wasn't
Yes.
sure how that works. Okay.
Yes, it works for natural opiates as well as the synthetic opioids. But the challenge is the synthetic ones are so potent that you need a lot. And
Okay.
so what it means is that now police are requesting to carry bags of boxes in their car instead of just, a couple of boxes here and there. They've been working alongside of the fire department and ambulances, etc. Anybody who's a first responder nowadays is requesting Narcan. And what that means, though, is that the state, who provides Narcan for free, by the way, to combat the opioid epidemic, is now being challenged in the sense of, we're using a lot more Narcan than is being produced and funneled through these state programs. So a lot of departments and a lot of organizations have Narcan as a standing order, but it's on back order because of the demand. And most of that demand is because of the more potent substances that are being used, requiring more Narcan use.
Wow. So if somebody's like listening to this, one of our listeners, or if someone wanted to learn more information or to get trained and how to identify these or maybe use Narcan, how would somebody sign up for this?
Yeah, so our Facebook page is probably the best bet. Drug Safe Solano on Facebook. And the reason that is because we get updates all the time. We also get comments and feedback, etc., like any Facebook page. But we also get connections with other organizations, agencies, and what they're doing as well. So if you want to know how to get trained on Narcan use, for example, those are posted regularly on our Facebook page, somewhat regularly on our web page nowadays. That is being less and less utilized, I think. So it makes more sense for us to utilize the social media more. So yeah, and then of course there are links to different resources though on our webpage. So still go to that, please do.
Yeah.
But if you want to sign up for a training, you could register in advance, save your spot. We sometimes have as many as 40 or more people doing the training. It's free. It lasts about an hour. It's between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock. And I say an hour, it's actually between 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how many questions and how many people attend. But after that, you get a certificate that you've completed the training and you get a free Narcan use kit. The only thing is, because these are virtual trainings right now, you have to provide us a way to get in touch with you to get your Narcan or for us to deliver it to you.
And can people come to you also if they are in need of Narcan? Do you supply it as well or connect them to people that supply it?
Yeah. Usually we connect them to central pharmacies in Vallejo. The owner of that pharmacy, Richie Duenas, is a super fantastic guy, first of all. And second of all, he's very active in the community, really cares a lot about the community too. So he's out there doing outreach, giving clothes to people who need clothes, food to people who need food. But he also gives Narcan kits to folks as well, both in clinic and outside of clinic. The only thing is he's running into the same thing as everybody else, running short on resources. So if you're trying to get a hold of some Narcan, be patient if no one has it. It's in demand right now. So,
Yeah.
and hopefully the state will step up. They're also looking at giving folks more potent version, the Overdose Intercept Kit. And that is coming out different forms now, but it's supposed to be double the dosage of each Narcan unit that we're currently giving. So that means we're going to be using half as much. And keep in mind that naloxone has no adverse side effects except for when people have some extreme allergies to an ingredient, but that's exceedingly rare. It's safe for use. We've heard people using it on infants. It's safe
Oh,
on even on canines, dogs. It's safe as well, which is, by the way, another reason why law enforcement are asking for more, because their dogs are the ones up front sniffing and stuff.
yeah.
If they happen to accidentally open a bag and then get this, powder into their nose or whatever, then it could have adverse effects.
Wow.
Yeah. And just a side note on that, it does have to enter your bloodstream somehow.
Mhm.
So the opiate, in order for it to act, just being near it is not enough to affect you in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
So you have to ingest it somehow or put it in your body somehow.
And this is just out of curiosity, can you use the same dosage on canines and children, like the same
Yeah.
Narcan? Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, the same thing. If for example, a canine or dog were to accidentally ingest carfentanil, in that case, you would keep giving them Narcan, a unit of Narcan every 2 to 3 minutes until they come through or until emergency services could come. I'm a huge advocate of an ambulance for animals, not necessarily animal control, because that's a little different, but you know they have pet insurance. Why not have an ambulance for our animal companions as well?
That's so true, especially when where time is kind of the essence. So, you want to
Yeah,
solve the issue quickly. And I wanted to ask you, Arthur, for Sandy's services, can anyone reach out to her? Are there any insurance requirements, or is it open to anyone?
Yeah, so there are substance use navigators associated with every emergency room and major HMO here in Solano County. So your best bet would be to check with your doctor first. They'll connect you with the patient navigator associated with your hospital, or like, for example, if you're Kaiser, they have a whole system to deal with it. If you're Sutter, Solano, that's another one. Sandy's associated with La Clinica, and she'll help anybody, but at the same time, she's one person, and so we want to make sure that people get channeled to where they're supposed to go. So check with your doctor first, and it can be very challenging, and you all know because you're in mental health services. It can be a challenge to ask someone for help, anybody for
Yeah.
help, let alone to go and ask about help for something like substance use or opioid use disorder. But when you need it. And so that's when you talk to your doctor. It may take a little time, and again, be patient if you can. It's hard to be patient when you're in crisis mode. I understand that. And that's where the patient navigators come in, because they are so good at directing folks to resources that are needed. We just happen to have one of the best, if not the best, but that may be a little bit of pride there. Sandy Rose is really good at working with people and getting information from them, as well as getting them information that they need.
That's great. Thank you so much for elaborating on that a little bit. And then I wanted to ask you, are your services, like, do you provide them in any other language other than English? Like for the trainings, are they offered in Spanish as well?
We do have training in Spanish for Narcan, and many of our materials and information are in Spanish. Y yo también hablo español, si quieren llamar y hablar con alguien que es de habla hispana. But for the largest part, most of the materials that we have are sadly only in English. We're working on, making sure they get translated. Part of our mission is to make sure that everybody has equitable access to services, and that means making sure that people get information at their literacy level as well as in their language. And being in the health profession, it's easy to forget that not everybody speaks doctor.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, the language. I know we've kind of gone through that with our project as well. But no, I think this is great. And thank you again, Arthur, just so much for taking the time to also give us some mini training. I know we kind of put you on the spot today, but I think it's really important and great to highlight to other people, and you talked about sometimes it's hard to reach out, and we just want everybody to know that there are places like Drug Safe Solano who are very approachable, if you have questions or anything like that, or just want more information. And so, yeah, no, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And again, we're here for the community, and we just want to make sure that people are safe. It's our mission is to prevent as many poisonings and overdoses as possible. So whatever we can do to help with that, that's what we're going to do.
And then before we just end this, was there anything else you wanted to add? I don't know. You want to talk about, you have some upcoming events. I don't know if you want to highlight any of those.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we do. We are currently working on putting on a substance use, opioid use disorder conference. It's coming up next week, as a matter of fact, September 9th. It was originally planned to be an in-person event. However, there were so many people reaching out to us saying that they wanted to participate that we decided to make it both in person and virtual. So check our Facebook page. There should be a flyer on there already with the link to register for the Zoom version of the conference. We're going to have a lot of folks within the industry talking about not only the services that they provide and how we can help the community best, or getting feedback on how we could provide services to the community in the best way possible. But we also have a few folks who are living with or have experienced substance use disorder and opioid use disorder, and they'll be there to answer questions as well. But we have a very limited amount of time, sadly, between now and then, 1 week. So make sure that you get on Facebook, look for Drug Safe Solano on Facebook, and then look for that flyer, click on the link, register, and there you go. You can be part of a movement to save people's lives and help other folks out of a situation that they everybody at some point in their life needs help. It's like I said, it's not easy to ask for help, but doesn't it feel great to be there when someone you care about does need help?
Yeah, that's so true, Arthur. And I really thank you for joining us today and teaching us a little bit more about Drug Safe Solano. To learn more about this resource, check out the link in our post. And we also want to remind you that if you're looking for mental or emotional health resources and services, you can visit SolanoConnex, which is spelled CONNEX.org. Thank you, Arthur.
Oh, you're welcome.